a world for a second where the Lions win? Do we see Matthew Stafford go up against his old team in the good old NFC Championship?
Hey. Yeah, we've seen it once, so I'm kind of thinking the odds are against it. So
yeah,
possibly. The thing that gives the Rams the chance is having Matthew Stafford. You have that battle-tested Super Bowl winning quarterback there. The challenge for those guys is going to be going on the road, playing outdoors, playing in the cold. Last time I checked the weather, it didn't look good. I'm actually taking the under in this game because of the weather. There's been a rain-snow chance mix all week. I've been checking it as the weeks went on. Of course, it could change game day. I mean, you could think snow and rain all week, and then game day it's just clear. But yeah, my money right now is sitting on the under, and it's sitting on the Eagles at -6. I got that bet in early when I seen the line come out. I jumped on it just because the Rams have one of the lower ranked teams in the playoffs still. I mean, their defense coming into the playoffs is still at like 20-22. I don't see them being able to stop the Eagles' run game. And, being outdoors, if it's cold, if it's windy, that's going to cut down the effectiveness of Matthew Stafford. The Eagles are just – and for a person like me, I'm an ex-engineer, I'm an ex-Army engineer and stuff, so I'm very much into the numbers and the stats. And when you have a team like the Eagles that have such good statistics and you're such a higher step above the other team, I can't turn that down. And that's really why my money's on the Eagles. Hey, yeah, can the Rams win it? Sure they can. They got a great coach, they got a good running back, they got a good quarterback, and that gives them a chance. But the Eagles have a great defense. That defense is at home. It might be in nasty weather. Defense wins in the playoffs. All these offenses can score in the playoffs, especially when you get to this point. Normally the question is which defense can shut down the other team's offense. And it's just going to be a tall task because the Eagles are going to be able to run the ball. And when you can run the ball and control the clock outside on grass, it's going to be tough to beat. And, those are my two bets. I'm not going to go through all the stats and bore you with every single statistic here, but just know that the Eagles are a step above. That defense is ranked number 1 in yards and points and combined defense. So yeah, and then you got the best running game in the league basically there. I guess the Ravens would have something to say about that. Between the Ravens and the Eagles, those are the two best running games. And in a nasty weather game, that's who I'm taking. So yeah, I guess I did do a wildfire adjustment for this game as well on the spread. Let's see what I had on the spread here. Vegas has the Eagles at -6. I have the Eagles at -7.6. So I do have this game. I have the spread as a bigger advantage for the Eagles, just like in the Chiefs Texans matchup. I have the Chiefs at a little bit higher point spread than what Vegas does. I could be wrong there. But yeah, the stats are saying that, this team's a step above, and that's what I'm going to roll with. I'm thinking that the Eagles have a good chance to win this one and win this one by a touchdown or more. And I think with the bad weather that this could get into a slugfest on the ground, a lot of running. The Rams can run the ball a little bit with Kyren Williams. So I could see this with with it being windy or snowy or rainy, just two teams trying to run, control the ball. That could honestly be an advantage for the Rams in the end. If the weather's bad, it's just going to keep the game close to where it could be like one score, and then whoever slops in the last touchdown wins. It could ruin my day like that. That last touchdown could destroy the spread and get an over.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to play with the odds here, you're going to go with the weather, and you're going to go with the statistically superior team. So that's what I'm seeing here, man. What do you got for it?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with everything you said, man. The Eagles they're just a flat out better football team. Statistically, everything. Maybe the one thing I would take, maybe a couple things I take over the Eagles is the Rams head coach, and I would take the Rams quarterback, and that might be about it. And in the playoffs, those two things are great. But in the playoffs, you have to be complete. You have to be more complete than that. And, don't get me wrong. The Rams are flashy. They have a couple really flashy pieces that can bring the rest, that can make the rest look better, like Puka, Cup, Kyron. I mean, Tyler, I think they got the tight end back. I think Higbee they got back. So they have all really good weapons, really flashy. But, in the playoffs, sometimes flashy isn't the way to win. In the Eagles, they're flashy in the ways you want to be in the playoffs. In a game like this where the weather's going to be crap, I mean, the Eagles, they can run the damn football, whether it's Hurts, whether it's Barkley. And on top of that, if you're struggling to stop their run, they could still throw it over the top on you to AJ Brown, Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
I mean, and then on top of that, like you said, that Eagles defense is pretty good. They have some really solid young players in the secondary. I mean, the Eagles have it, man. They haven't made, the defensive line maybe is their weakness, is one of their, weaker points, believe it or not. Maybe sometimes they struggle to get pressure, and if you struggle to get pressure on Matthew Stafford, I don't care who you got. I mean, it doesn't. I don't really care who you got in the secondary with those weapons. Stafford can carve you up, but like you said, colder game, and I think this is a game where Matthew Stafford throws one or two interceptions, and it's one of those games where Stafford's really aggressive. He's a Brett Favre kind of a quarterback. He's going to throw interceptions, and I think this is one of those games where he throws those interceptions, and in a game where you can't afford to lose any possessions because the Eagles are just going to have this stranglehold on the clock. I mean, the way they can run the football and the Rams struggling to stop the run, I mean, they're just going to bleed that clock like all hell, man. So, the Rams can't afford to turn the ball over, so Matthew Stafford throws a pick or two, that could bear, one pick could very simply be the difference in this game. So, yeah, I'm with you, man. I think the Eagles are a comfortable pick in this game. So, but like you said, Super Bowl winning quarterback on the other side, Super Bowl winning head coach, couple of really good players, really flashy players. The Rams defense line is really good too, but isn't going to be enough to stop the Eagles run game. Probably not. A lot of the better teams in the league, better run defense struggle to stop it. So I'm not too sure if the Rams could stop it. But could this be a game where Jalen Hurts turns the ball over? Say something crazy is happening, like say the Eagles are just having a hard time getting the run game going, which probably isn't going to happen. But let's throw that theoretical in there. Sometimes they're fun to talk about. If they can't get that run game going, can Jalen Hurts put the game on his back and win the game? Even though he's got all those weapons, it seems like even before Barkley came to the Eagles this year, it seemed like Hurts was struggling because he didn't have a good run game, that he didn't really have something else to rely on. And let's just say that Eagles run game doesn't show up. Let's say it's not as good as it's been all year, and Hurts has to put the game on his back. Could he do it? I'm not too sure, but I would have more confidence in Matthew Stafford in that situation.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And turnovers are always huge. That's one thing it's hard to calculate, who's going to turn the ball over more and who's going to get more possessions. So, if somebody goes out there and doesn't perform as well as they normally do, then that can throw the entire team's day off. And, I'm wondering, I know my cousin, he was talking about this game, and he was asking me, will the NFL Mafia show up for the Los Angeles Fire Department? Will they all be there wearing hats, and will the refs be calling the game a certain way and that kind of deal?
Yeah.
But I kind of counter that with, last week was a pretty emotional week for them, a big emotional win. And a lot of times after those emotional wins, you can have a letdown. There's been a lot of distractions for the Rams too this last week. I mean, you've had all these wildfires going on. You've had all that. And that first week, they performed really well. Well, I look back at the Chargers. The Chargers didn't do so well down there in Texas. So, I felt like they were a little bit better than that. And I'm like, well, what was going on with that team? Well, you have LA on fire. You have all those people out of place. I think for one team, it probably did show up. And for the other team, they kind of used it more as motivation. They kind of caught the momentum there. And for one team, it worked. And for one team, it didn't. So I'm wondering if that doesn't catch up with the Rams. And there again, does that almost have a reverse psychology effect where it galvanizes the team and they come out with just their best performance of the season?
Right.
It could. I mean, that could really galvanize a squad like that, and they come out just to be stubborn and like they're not going to lose with that mindset. And it just turns into a rock fight, and then, like I said, at the end, somebody slops in a score.
Yeah, you never know. That can ruin anyone's day.
The evil backdoor cover.
Hey, never know. But another thing I do want to bring up is that the Rams are going across the country, man. A lot of times when teams have to go across the country, they have to do some significant traveling. It tends to have an effect on them. So
it's a great gambling point. The teams that have been traveling like that have not been doing very well. So
and on top of that, LA is always warm. It's always warm over there. Going to cold, icy, that nasty weather, and everything on top of that. Eagles fans are tough, man. That stadium is tough.
It's not the Dolphins, but they're still a warm weather team.
Right.
The Rams are. It's not. They're not like And you got to remember that too about these California teams that come out there from the warm weather, from indoor stadiums. When you come outside, it's an issue. Like you're going from turf to playing on grass, which is more slippery. You're going from playing indoors where it's warm and there's no wind and everything's perfect to now it's cold, it's windy, there's moisture on the ball. and Matthew Stafford, as an experienced quarterback, he's not going to have a huge issue with that. But I will say about Stafford, he's played indoors most of his career. He played at the Lions indoors and he's played for the Rams indoors. So I just think, and the way I look at games from a gambler's perspective, when a team goes from indoors to outdoors, when you go from turf to grass, that's one of the bigger challenges. Just like, if the Dolphins have to go to Buffalo or New England to play in the snow, like that's a bigger advantage. Like you got to add a point for that, and adding a point, that's a lot. Like when you talk about an NFL game that comes down to, most of them are one score games between 3 and 7 points. When you give somebody an entire point, it's a big deal. You may, it's just a point. No, a point's a huge deal. Half a point's pretty big. Half a point loses and wins millions every day.
That's right. That's right. Every little sliver of change, it makes a difference.
It does.
Sure does. All right. Is that all we got for that game, or are we ready to move on to the last one? Which
I think we're ready for
maybe the most